Hi, this is Snoop Dogg, and you're about to see the best sports and entertainment talk show on the internet with your host, Troy Geary. The man who seems to go to every sporting event, and Dave Stevens born without legs, but won 7 Emmys and played college football and minor league baseball. Throw in Will Stein wherever Will Stein is, and you've got a heck of a show. It's the Geary, Stein, and Stevens Show. Faux shizzle.
That's right. Here we are once again at Radio Row, kicking off our Super Bowl coverage. And you can see as our good buddy Will Stein is filling in all kinds of roles today. This is Radio Row. We're to give you a little pan of what's going on. It's a little empty again. Monday is the day that they kind of, get things kicked off. But you can see all the sets are here. All the people are starting to arrive. Tonight is opening night. And man, I am just excited for our first guest today. Troy, are you ready for today's show?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to this guy we're about to talk to. Played for my Vikings for a little bit, NFC Central. So it'll be a great show.
All right, and you're taking a look at Radio Row. And as I said, we'll get back on camera here. But let me bring in our guest today. I mean, I could sit here and give a ridiculously long introduction for this man. He was actually part of the Super Bowl here in New Orleans, I think 29 years ago. He won it for the Green Bay Packers, All-Pro, Hall of Famer, played for the Green Bay Packers, played for my Minnesota Vikings, and we'll forget about that Jets here. Brett Favre joining us. Brett, it is so awesome to have you here. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So what do you got going today? What's a day in the life of Brett Favre?
Not much. I'll probably do some odds and ends stuff outside. I'm an outside person. We have about 460 acres here in Hattiesburg, which is about an hour and a half northeast of New Orleans. Generally, I could be down there in 75 minutes. Yeah, I just, hang out here on my property most of the time. Play, maybe a game of golf once a week. I haven't lately because, we had it's not cold now, but like the last several weeks was like 20 degrees. So now that the weather's starting to get nice again, so I'll go outside and do some stuff. But, I'm not, I'm not going to work too hard. Don't get me wrong.
And you've been pretty public about dealing now with the onset of Parkinson's, and I'm just wondering how you're coming to terms with that. How did you discover it, and do we think we know where it came from?
So about 3 years, maybe a little bit longer, 3 years ago, I started noticing some quirky things. And what I mean by that is, I would be outside, inside, playing golf, you name it. And when I would be walking, I noticed that my right arm would be fixed in a 90-degree position. And I thought, that's kind of, I looked at my arm, put it down, walk normal. When I would forget about it, it would go back to that spot. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I'm obviously right-handed, very dominant right-handed. But if I were to put on a jacket, long sleeve shirt, I could not guide my arm into the sleeve. And I felt my arm. It wasn't like it was a numb or anything like that. I felt my arm, but I just could not guide it. And then, like using my right hand, maybe screwing in something with a screwdriver. I would be all over the place. So that's kind of really the first thing. When you think of Parkinson's, I think most people think of shaking. I had a little bit, but the kind of Parkinson's that I was diagnosed with, it's called idiopathic Parkinson's. And there's basically 3 characteristics of idiopathic. And you'll have one of those as the dominant trait. cognitive memory, rigidity and stiffness, shaking and tremors. I just happen to have the rigidity and stiffness dominant trait, and a little bit of the other stuff. So, mine's not so much shaking as it is if I'm not on my medication, I feel like, when I say I feel like a 2x4, I mean, I can't stress to you how stiff and my just movement functions are drastically affected. But so a year ago I was diagnosed, and I'll be honest with you, my first thought was I'm going to die, sooner than I would hope. The end of the world's coming. It just, I thought all those things. And, as the dust has settled, a lot of people live with Parkinson's. But it affects people differently, much like general life. One person gets the flu and they're down for a half a day, and the next person's for a week. So the decline of the disease is unpredictable. So someone may have the same type of Parkinson's I have and was diagnosed the same day, and they may decline much quicker or may not. But there's no way to predict that. I'm early in the diagnosis or the disease. So that gives me a fighting chance that if they do come out with something that would slow the progression or even stop the disease in its tracks, I would be in a much better place. But, I'm sure a lot of people, including Michael J. Fox, said the same thing 30 some odd years ago. So, and where it came from, I asked my doctor, and I've met with 5 different specialists, and they've all basically said the same thing. They've said the same thing as far as what I should do from a protocol perspective, but also where I got it. If it's not in your family history, which is where they look first, then they would go to head trauma or environmental, chemicals, whatever. But the obvious answer would be football. There's no way to tell how many concussions I've had or head trauma in itself, but you got to figure a lot. And like my local doctor here said, Brett, don't worry yourself, because it doesn't matter at this point. What matters is you got it. It's not going away. You deal with it, and that's what I'm doing.
So with medication, I mean, I was born without legs. I've got my handicap. It's debilitating. I deal with it. You have had to have this given to you late in life. So how do you prepare mentally for those challenges, for your grandkids and all those things that you want to do in your golden years?
Well, every doctor I've met with, I met with a doctor in Switzerland. I met with a doctor in Miami. I met with one in West Virginia and in Houston, and my local doctor. And every one of them said, what you're doing is the right thing. And there's really not much from an option. You take the medicine, it's called carbidopa levodopa, or the generic name is Cinnamon. You take that about every 4 hours, and the dose is different for everyone. One pill may be enough every 4 hours for one person, and 3 may be the dose. But what I'm doing is the right thing. But they all said emphatically that you have got to stay as active as possible. They have found that the people who face it head on and are active, whether it be biking, hiking, walking, jogging, lifting weights, boxing, whatever, that seems to slow it down, if you will, and maybe that's the wrong word, but they find that people who throw the towel in decline much faster. So I'm trying to be as active, and so when I wake up, I do think about the fact that I got Parkinson's because I have to take medication every 4 hours. I'm constantly reminded. But I there's days I don't feel like this morning I rode 35 miles on my bike. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't feeling like I wanted to do that. But, I keep in mind what they've said: stay active, stay active, stay active. And so, I'm trying to, stay ahead of it, if that makes sense.
Well,
All
talk
right,
about
Brent, I
staying
wanna ask
active.
you about-
Troy, go ahead. He wants to ask you about when you were active as a youngster.
Yeah, 1996. So we're talking about the Super Bowl you won here in New Orleans. What do you most remember about that day? I mean, everybody remembers seeing you run up on the field with your helmet in the air. But let's talk about that day and what do you most remember about it?
Well, I think what I most remember about that game was the first play of the game. It just happened to be an audible that Andre Rison, we had him for maybe 3 weeks, so he was new to the team. So we didn't go through all the plays with him. And as we prepared for New England, Bill Belichick was the defense coordinator, and as much as I've played against his teams, he does not gamble. And what I mean by that is he plays it pretty conservative and expects the guys to play exactly like he coaches it, and not to give up big plays. So they never blitzed in our our week preparation for them. I mean, zero. They played zone. Maybe would bring an outside backer or something, but very vanilla. So we didn't even practice or even talk about all out blitz audible. In the first play of the game, lo and behold, they show all out blitz. And I'm thinking the 40-second clock is ticking down. I'm thinking if I audible and I'm wrong, Holmgren's going to just rip me a new one. But if I'm right and I make this work, this is going to be the most incredible thing ever, because not only am I rolling the dice, but Andre Rison has no clue what we're running. And so Antonio Freeman, one of the smartest players I ever played with was Antonio. So I checked the play. If you look at the film, and I don't know if they show it, Antonio tells Andre what to do. And I drop back. They run the right route. I make the right throw, and lo and behold, it works. And so I take my helmet off, and really I was running around so excited because I was saying to myself, can you believe this worked? I mean, you got to be, this is the most amazing thing, that I actually did the right thing in the biggest stage of all in football. But that's basically what I remember about that whole game. And the fact that it was in New Orleans, which is about 50 minutes from where I grew up, was extra sweet. But when I think about it, I can't believe it's been that long. Damn, time flies.
Yeah, you were just that young kid running around in the field, exuberant. I mean, I was watching that today, and I can't believe it's 29 years ago. You still look like you could get out on the field and throw a couple of passes. Do you miss the game? Do you miss a lot of what you had apart, or was it more of the camaraderie with the guys in the
It was more the camaraderie and the things that were off the field related. The bus rides, the plane rides, cracking jokes in the locker room. I don't think anyone would question the fact that I love my teammates and I love the fans. And nothing I ever did was choreographed or premeditated. I just kind of spontaneously played and celebrated and just the best way I knew how, and that was just be authentic. And from the day I retired, I have not one time said, well, I wish I was out there playing. And I'm thankful for that, because that would be you know, and playing 20 years and starting 321 straight games, there's nothing left for me to do. So I think that in itself, you know, there's a lot of guys that would say, well, I wish I'd have stuck it out 2 more years and you know, for whatever reason. You know, fortunately, I don't say that, but I do miss the guy.
And you set so many records, which, you know, at the time they were the records. Now they've been passed. But I've always been curious because when I was at ESPN, even when you retired, there were always the rumors you were going to come back that next year or the year after that or the year after that. When did you know it was time to walk away?
Actually, after the Jet season, I was beat down, and I'm not. You may or may not remember. I tore a bicep, my throwing arm. I tore the bicep about week 9 during the Jets season, and if you, I think I'm not certain on this, but I think we were like 9-2. I mean, we were actually hitting on all cylinders, and then you know I tear my bicep. I knew I tore my bicep because I actually tore my left one about 5 years before that. So I knew based off the symptoms that I had torn my bicep. And so every throw, every handoff hurt. My play reflected that. You know, my accuracy and distance and all that was drastically affected. And so at the end of that year, you know, I mean, that was year 17, and I was pretty beat up, but you know, I got a chance to go to Minnesota. I had the surgery, and we had a magical year, as you remember. I mean, it was fantastic, but the way it ended was so devastating, and I really had enough at that point. But the guys talked me back into coming, the organization. You know, and everyone said the same thing, and I agree. You come back, we get everybody back, we'll make another run. There's, you know, you're going to regret it if you don't, because you always wonder, what if? Had I stayed, what if? So I took that chance, and you know, it wasn't to be, but I really enjoyed those last 2 years because the organization welcomed me with open arms, and that probably more than anything was what I remember most about those last 2 years. But yeah, I knew physically when I did retire that last year, I knew there is no coming back because I was beat down pretty good. I could still throw it, but physically my legs and my joints were hurting so bad. And I just had enough. If you can hear me, I can't hear you now. You hear me? Okay, there we go.
Yes, we have you. There we go. Okay, Troy, go ahead.
Speaking about your start in Minnesota, what a Ryan Lionwell and Steve Hutchinson, those guys that came down and talked to you, say to convince you to come back, even though, like say, you're talking about you going through those injuries.
Well, first of all, those guys, especially Ryan, we went back, you know, many years from our time in Green Bay, and we're still dear friends today. Hutchinson, Jared, great guys. Loved them as a teammate. Loved them off the field. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't that hard to convince me to come back. You know, the crazy thing about that whole experience was after the first year in Minnesota, Rob Brzezinski was the GM. Great guy. And so after that last game, the next day in the Vikings facility, he came over and put his arm around me and said, man, you know, heck of a year. We want you back. I'm not going to bother you. I'll check in in 2 or 3 months, but just know we want you back. And I had 2 years left in my contract. So I said, Rob, do me a favor. And he said, yeah, what's that? And I said, don't offer me any more money. And he looked at me like, and then started laughing. He said, of all my years of dealing with contracts and players, I don't think I've ever heard someone say, don't offer me more money. Because I didn't want it to be about money or anything like that. But lo and behold, he calls me about 2.5, 3 months later and said, we're going to offer you 3-4 more million. I can't remember the exact amount. The great thing about that is I did decide to come back. But we donated, I think, $1.5 million to Children's Hospital and Ronald McDonald House to build a hospital wing. So even though the season was not what we were hoping, we got to do some good things with it.
Brett, we have a Will Stein sighting. We never see him on the show anymore. So, Will, you get your question for Brett.
Hey, Brett, it's great to talk to you. Honored to have the opportunity to speak to you. You grew up in a small town in Mississippi. How much more comfortable did playing in a community like Green Bay help you as you progress your career in Green Bay as you made all these memories for fans across the league?
Yeah, Green Bay could not have been a better fit. And I tell people this, I'm thankful for the Atlanta Falcons because of my year with Atlanta, I got traded to Green Bay. Now, did I ever think about playing in Green Bay? Did that ever cross my mind? No. And you would think a boy from South Mississippi, where it doesn't get very cold, would not do very well up there. But if you think back, Bart Starr was from Alabama, and we all know what he did. But the relationship between me and the fans, especially there initially, we both are blue collar. What you see is what you get. I just happened to be playing and entertaining them in Lambeau Field, which was an extreme honor. And I never took that for granted. The first touchdown pass I threw in Lambeau Field meant just as much, if not more, than the last pass I threw in Lambeau Field. And I think when I went back to be inducted into the Green Bay Packer Hall of Fame 4 years after I retired, keep in mind, the last time I was in that stadium, I was an opponent and got booed horrendously. And I was a little bit worried about the reception that I was going to receive. And there were 75,000 people in the stadium just to see me be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I'll be honest with you, I cried like a baby. And I mean, it was so emotional to see. It was like family, 75,000 people, family welcoming me back with open arms. And so it was just a wonderful connection between me and the fans that I'll never take for granted.
Did you have any initial apprehension about going to Minnesota because of that relationship and with the fans in Green Bay and all that, those years there?
Well, yeah, it crossed my mind. I knew that there was going to be a lot of people that said, well, I'm putting all my Favre memorabilia in the furnace and I'm going to burn it. And I understood that. That's the thing that makes Green Bay so special, is how passionate the fans are. And, they love their football. They love their community. They're hard workers. And, I was going to the one of the biggest, if not presently, the biggest rival in the division. So, but I knew if I didn't do it, I was going to regret not getting this, one more shot, even though it was with Minnesota. I wanted to prove that I still could play.
Brett, we've talked enough football, so let's get to more lighthearted approach again. I know you were number one in so many statistics, but I found out recently you were the third pick for Something About Mary. I just found that out, that basically they were supposed to offer it to Steve Young, but it was too controversial and dirty for him. They offered it to Bledsoe. Bledsoe had just done a stage dive into a band, and he was trying to repair his, image. And then they came to you, and I know you had just won the Super Bowl, but how did that come about? And all these years later, again, we're still talking about this movie that you were in.
But you're absolutely right. I was third. That didn't hurt my feelings. Steve Young and Drew Bledsoe were better looking than I, and were more polished than I. But so my agent, Bus Cook, I don't know, February, March, April, somewhere around that time, like he always would do. And he lives here in town, not too far from me. Gives me a call and he's like, hey, and he's always joking around. He says, you want to be in a movie? And I said, why in the world would you ask me something like that? Because that had never come out of his mouth, nor did it ever come out of mine as something I wanted to do. And he said, well, I got a call from such and such, and they want you to do a cameo in a movie. And I said, when, what, how, where? And he said, well, they want you to come down to Miami, spend 2 days. Your part in the movie will be small.
30 minutes.
They don't pay any money. I think I got like $500, and it wasn't about that. So my wife Deanna and I, we talked about it. It was like, I don't plan on having a career in movies, then, now, ever. But I said, this would be an opportunity to do something that I would never get an opportunity to do otherwise. And, just do it and say you've done it and move on. That being said, Ben Stiller, Cameron Diaz, Matt Dillon, they were sort of in their infant stages of acting, so they were not widely known, nor was I. I mean, I was just starting to kind of break on the scene. And we had a blast. We went out to eat with the crew, like in between filming, we would go out and throw the football, and just it was very different, experience for me. But I'm glad I did it. It ended up being a blockbuster movie, not because I was in it. I tell people all the time I should have won an Oscar because I was, I say this jokingly. They told me to act stiff and nervous, and I did a great job of it.
Are you still getting those 13-cent residual checks?
I haven't seen any. but it's funny when every once in a blue moon I'll encounter someone that will say, not, hey, you play for Green Bay or you're the quarterback. Every once in a while they'll say, you were in Something About Mary. And I'm like, yeah. But it was funny. It was a funny movie.
Well, speaking of funny, I think it was a really funny reaction that we had recently, and it, I'm not talking about anything that the world hasn't heard about, but it's the controversy of you running into Mark Gastineau, and we're taking a look at Strahan's record-setting sack that passed Gastineau, and there's been controversy, but then after years later, this poor old kind of beat up guy, you guys are at a card show or whatever it was, and you guys have what I thought it was kind of funny at first, but it turned out to be an uncomfortable confrontation where he genuinely seemed pretty upset. I mean, how did you react to that?
Well, you're absolutely right. I'd never met Mark before. Of course, I knew who he was. We were at a card signing. There was, 50 to 100 retired players from all different athletic backgrounds, boxing, basketball, baseball. And he comes walking over, and I said this maybe a week or two ago in a different interview that after the fact, I think it was a setup because the cameras were hiding back over a divider, and it was, I don't think Mark. I mean, he definitely physically, I mean, he's still a big guy, and I put my hand out to shake, his hand. He doesn't put his hand out. And then I thought, I think this guy's going to take a swing at me, and I'm thinking the last thing I want to do is have to fight Mark Gastineau. I mean, I'm literally thinking that at that time. Fortunately, some people broke it up, but I was shocked. I mean, I did not see that coming.
And you haven't since like punched Tom Brady or any of the guys that broke your records. I mean, it seems so. That's what the game is about, is to set those records. It's not about the records, but obviously you have them, and others in your future are going to break those records.
I mean, records are meant to be broken. And if you, as a player, gauge your worth or your value to the the sport that you play based off of records, you're going to be very disappointed at some point because they're going to be broken. I never thought about records, growing up. I dreamed of playing pro football or Major League Baseball, and that was it. I never dreamed of playing in Pro Bowls. I did envision many times, daydream, night dreams, whatever, running out of on the field, during the Super Bowl with calling my name out. As a kid, I dreamed about that all the time. And so all the things that I was able to achieve over and beyond just the fact that I got to dress in pro uniform and play professional football, which was enough for me, is gravy. I mean, I look at it as, you got to be kidding me. And when records are broken, I don't go, well, I'll be depressed the rest of my life. I mean, it is what it is. The fact, I did everything I could do and then some, and the reward was great. And I wouldn't change it for anything. I could care less if Drew Brees or Tom Brady broke my records, because someday somebody's going to break theirs.
I want to ask you about Andy Reid. I know he was in Green Bay a long time ago. What are your thoughts about what he's done since he left Green Bay, and do you have a pick for the game?
Well, Andy, when he became my quarterback coach, he was our tight end coach for several years. Mariucci left to go to Cal to be the head coach, and Mike appoints Andy as the quarterback coach. And I remember, and Andy we hit it off from the get-go. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Not a hard ass, but you respect him greatly. And so I remember jokingly saying to Andy, right after Holmgren, appointed him as the quarterback coach, it was actually a phone call, and Andy said, "Hey, I'm your new quarterback coach." And I said, "What are you going to teach me about being a quarterback?" And he said, "Absolutely nothing." He said, "But I'm going to teach you how to watch film. I'm going to give you tricks to the trade." And that's exactly what he did. Andy is one of the simplest coaches you'll ever meet. And it just baffles me when coaches outthink themselves. And Andy learned from the best in Holmgren. I mean, Mike was so good at looking at his team, and he was a play caller, and saying, maybe I want to throw deep balls, but I don't have deep ball receiver. Or maybe I want to be a power running team, but I don't have a power running back or an offensive line that's, is a power running offensive line. And so Mike was very masterful of calling plays that cater to what we are individually and collectively as a unit. And Andy, when he first set me down and said, he said, what do you look at when you watch film? What do you, he just posed that question to me, and I said, I just kind of watched the game. And he said, I knew you were going to say that. And he said, what I want you to look at when you're watching film is look for the one guy that tells you what the whole team is doing. And not every defense you play is easy to find. But when I started watching film that way, it simplified things so much, because there usually is one guy. A lot of times it's a rookie who does it exactly like the coach tells him to, where a seasoned vet like an Urlacher is going to throw you off. He's going to disguise. And so from that point on, I watch film so much different, and mentally it simplified the game for me tremendously. So, I'm not surprised at all at Andy's success, because he keeps it simple. And it never ceases to amaze me how he'll outsmart the defensive coordinator, with maybe a motion or a formation adjustment, put a receiver in the backfield, kind of making the defense force their hand, but not being too complicated in how he does it. If Patrick Mahomes were to say, why don't we just call it this? I mean, that's more simple. Andy's going to say, all right, go with it. He's going to work with you, but he's all about keeping it simple. And the success is obvious over the years.
You've had a lot of great coaches, and those successes helped your career. I talk about not having legs and leaving my legacy. What is going to be your legacy? You're getting an award here this week. We're going to see you with the Lee Steinberg card. You're getting a Humanitarian of the Year award because of so much that you've done. But what do you want Brett Favre to be remembered once we're not here?
I've heard a lot of fans over the years say, the game's not the same without you playing. We loved your enthusiasm and just love for the game and your teammates. And I think more than anything, including awards, that resonates with me more than anything. It wasn't the most polished play. It wasn't perfect. I wish I would have won more games, but it was authentic. And so I hope people down the road say he was just a joy to watch. That guy loved playing, and he loved playing for the fans and for his teammates, and would do anything he possibly could to win. It wasn't perfect, and you had to take the good with the bad. I certainly can attest to that, but it was 100% pure. And like I said in my Hall of Fame speech, I don't look back and hold any regrets, because I did it the best way I knew how, and I was always prepared. So I don't look back and say, dang, I wish I'd have studied more. I wish I would have prepared more, physically. I did everything I could possibly do. And I think people appreciate that because I left it on the field.
Prediction.
And as far as who I think will win, I do think Philly has a very good chance of beating them. And I hear so many people say, well, Kansas City's won by a hair, it seems like, every game. But the fact is, they've won. And until someone beats them out and becomes king of the mountain, my vote is for Kansas City.
That's a pretty good pick. And I know we got to wrap up, but a couple of real quick things. You got any good Reggie White stories that you could impart us with that would be, clean and fun?
Well, one of my favorite Reggie White stories. So we draft. Our nose tackle was a guy named John Jurkovic, the Croatian sensation, good player. Well, we ended up drafting his younger brother, Mirko Jurkovic, from Notre Dame, who was going to be our right tackle. I think we drafted him in the second round. And he's facing Reggie White in practice one day. Reggie's shoulder pads are unbuckled, his chin strap's unbuckled. He's not giving it his, if Reggie would have given his all in practice, we'd have never gotten anything accomplished. So Mirko, south side of Chicago, he and John, if you didn't know any better, you'd think they were from New York, kind of brash, outspoken, hey, forget about it, a lot of cursing. And Reggie comes in kind of halfway rushing, and Mirko kind of grabs him by the jersey and throws him down. Now, keep in mind, Mirko is just 1 or 2 weeks into, his pro football debut. Reggie gets up and says, he slings Reggie to the ground, and Hasselback was in at quarterback, and I'm back there watching from the back along with everyone else. And Reggie gets up and says, "Hey, Mirko, don't hold me." And Mirko says, "Hey, F you, Reggie." And I said, "Y'all better back up." So the next play, well, as Reggie's walking back over, you see him buckling his chin strap and his shoulder pads. And I said, "Here we go." And he just destroyed Mirko the next play. And all the linemen, it would look like a bowling match. Everybody was just toppling over. And when Mirko got up, Reggie said, "Now remember, God loves you, and don't ever hold me again."
Oh, that's hilarious. I got to ask one more thing, because you're kind of like Kevin Bacon, because all those players have played with you or against you, and now you got Aaron Rodgers, who kind of followed your footsteps, didn't have the success in New York. We don't know where he's going to go. I mean, do you have any advice for him as he's kind of at that plateau where you were at the end of your career?
If you were to ask, and Aaron's not going to ask, but if he's still, I think the last few games, he was probably the best he played the whole year. And he showed that he still got I think he's very capable of lighting it up. If he chooses to play or wants to play, then by all means do it, because you can't go back. And again, I think whether it be with the Jets, if he plays the way he played the last few games, he gives them a much better chance to win. And I don't know how many teams would take a gamble on him, but I think he's got a lot of juice in the tank.
Hey, if the Vikings lose Darnold to money or whatever,
Who
might as well follow your footsteps right back into Minnesota, right?
I bet Green Bay would be hoping he doesn't do that.
Yeah. Well, Brett, do you have any words of wisdom or anything that you'd like to say to the fans that we don't get to see a lot? So it's really awesome that you spent this time with us, and we could go on for hours and talk about so much, but just words of wisdom to leave everybody by, and how you're dealing with all of the things.
I'm more distant from fans these days, obviously, because I'm removed from the game and been removed for a long time. But I just thank everyone for their support. It's been, when I think back to my career, I think about the fans and the response that, the love that they showed for me. And I greatly appreciate it. Much like you guys have me on the show. Thank you.
Hey, this is a career. I can't wait to meet you Saturday and shake your hand again. We met years ago at the San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl, and I think Kenny Mayne was there.
Yeah.
I know you've done some crazy things with Kenny Mayne back in the day, but just to be a part of this, and again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you at the end of the week, and that's it for you.
Well, thanks, guys. See you in about a week.
Thank you for your time. We
All
appreciate
right.
you.
Thank you so much. All right, that's Brett Favre joining us. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Troy, Will, your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, great way to start the week. Hall of Fame quarterback, so it's just going to get better from here.
And Will, I got your idea in about Rodgers going to Minnesota, because you started that crazy rumor.
Hey, now, it was fun talking to Brett, listening to him, tell him stories about his life and how he impacted us all. So thank you so much to Brett Favre and allowing him to be a part of us today.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and pay some bills. As we kicked off our Super Bowl week, we'll have more people in person all week long. We are kicking up with opening night, which is going to be an exciting night tonight. Again, that real fun opportunity where it's a little more laid back, but you've also got 10,000 journalists, and some of them I hesitate to call them journalists because they're just out there trying to piss people off or ask the craziest or wacky questions. But hey, what are you going to do? It's the Super Bowl, and we're just happy to be here. So stay tuned. Stick with us. You're watching Geary Stein.
Serendipity Yacht Cruises and Events wants you to come party with us. We're bringing the fun to the Houston Bay Area. Stay tuned for all of our incredible events throughout the year, featuring amazing food and drinks, live entertainment, special guests, and so much more. Fun, new, different. Serendipity Yacht Cruises and Events is where you want to be. So come party with us. It's more than a yacht. It's serendipity.
Introducing the world's first temporary airbrush tattoo kiosk, iTattoo, bringing wearable, shareable temporary body art to live events. iTattoo stands for Interactive Temporary Airbrush Tattoo Unit. The team is raising additional capital for this incredible iTattoo concept, putting ink on skin at scale. I'll say it again, folks, ink on skin at scale. This will be the coolest addition to any event, and imagine the reactions when you add body art to the mix. Cool kiosks for a large venue or event. And it's super sponsorable. If you or anyone is interested in talking about the cap raise or the unit itself, please reach out to Nathan or Chris at itattoo.life.
Hi, my name is Shaquille Duggar, and I'm the CEO and founder of Pi. My passion is and always has been helping people. That's why I created Pi. I wanted to devise solutions that would make it easier for businesses to become more efficient and effective to drive profitability, while at the same time helping the customers they serve. Our newest self-service solution is a perfect example of that collaboration. Business leaders told us they wanted a smaller alternative to the larger freestanding kiosks they already love, and we delivered with our newest product. A countertop device we call Eclair introduces space-saving, compactness, versatility, and convenience. When it comes to our self-service solutions industry specifically, we put considerable stock in a quote from Alan Key. People who are really serious about software should make their own hardware. That's Pi in a nutshell. To ensure we produce the best self-service options, we do it all, designing and developing our own hardware and software. The bulk of our business involves the food industry, catering to an evolving industry with technology that is ever evolving itself. Our customers aren't necessarily in traditional restaurant locations. They're in malls, food trucks, and pop-up stands. Additionally, we perform considerable research of consumer trends and behaviors, trying to forecast what they will want and need as it relates to self-service in the short and long term. It's challenging, but exciting and satisfying work. Visiting the restaurant of one of our partners and seeing customers effortlessly order and pay for food through a Pi kiosk puts a huge smile on my face. And it fuels to do more to further enhance their experience. Our latest kiosk designs are reflective of what we've learned, observed, and anticipated. We are designing attractive enclosures that make our kiosks hard to pass by. We're developing and installing intuitive software that's easy to use, and we're incorporating curved high-definition touchscreens that enhance visual quality. At Pi, our ultimate objective is to bring a personal approach to self-service solutions that also display our creativity and ability to devise great products. I introduce to you Pi's newest product, Eclair. Welcome to Pi.
Well, I'm hungry enough. I could use an Eclair right now, but I think they're talking more about the kiosks and stuff. So, guys, that's a pretty cool morning if you start with one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, right?
Absolutely.
You don't have a mic on, so you forgot that right there. But, Troy, I mean, I think that's one of our best guests that we had on the fly. Didn't get a lot of time. They literally called us yesterday and said, you got Brett. So, I mean, what was your biggest takeaway from his stories? I think his dealing with Parkinson's is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an ongoing battle with him, and hopefully for his sake, and like Michael J. Fox, he can live a long time with medication and treatment. And looking forward to meeting him on Saturday.
All right. If you're wondering why I'm shaking and moving around, I have to go to the bathroom so bad, but we had to get this show in, and so I'm going to do that. And we're going to see you a little bit later. So for Troy and Will, you're actually here, so you can wave, right? Another great edition of the Geary, Stein, and Stevens Show. Again, you can follow us on all social media platforms. You can watch us on Facebook and YouTube and all those things. And now, Velocity Sports. So, we'll see you later.
I'll end it with live. You want me to do it?
I'm going to fade the music out.